I was totally against Shedeur coming to New York. I don't think his lights are neon.
I went and got that new Maybach. I stayed grinding. They told me bust out my AP.
I don't like my quarterbacks flashy. I like them under the radar. I don't prefer quarterbacks that like the attention.
Joe Namath to me is the GOAT. He was Broadway Joe.
A young, hip, kind of almost hippie with sideburns and long hair. Not only was he a great player, but it was like he was one of us.
I went and got that new Maybach. I stayed
now tuned in to the Dark Times channel.
And so here we go again, back with another one. Welcome back to the Dark Times channel. And I want to go ahead and take a look at a video with Skip Bayless on an interview that he did with none other than Michael Rapaport, who's a big personality within sports, and he's somebody that's very opinionated.
You know what I mean? And those neighborhoods in Brooklyn, the majority of the neighborhoods that have been gentrified were either abandoned. Williamsburg was a joke in the 90s. It was like this little niche place. It was like, you know, warehouses. It's good that it got better.
Rapaport doesn't know what he's talking about. Here's the thing, gentrification, what Michael Rapaport left out because he's stupid, he did not talk about the people who can no longer afford to live in Williamsburg, who can no longer afford to live in Fort Greene, who can no longer afford to live in Clinton Hill. Yeah, it's better for you, for the people who moved in. Why, let me ask you this. For the schools to get better in Fort Greene, why do we have gentrification? For the garbage we picked up, why happened because of gentrification? When you see white young women pushing their kids in strollers down 125th Street, 3 o'clock in the morning, what does that tell you? What does that tell you? There's more police present.
Right.
But where was the police before white people moved into Fort Greene? People are being displaced, and they never talk about the people who are forced to live out of their neighborhoods because of gentrification.
What do you say?
And then that thing to Michael Rapaport is so lame.
That's how,
because I live in Upper East Side. That is so ignorant that because I live in Upper East Side.
Yeah.
Look, he's not even a good filmmaker, first of all. He's not even a good filmmaker. He's not even a good filmmaker, so I don't know what he's talking about.
But I want you guys to go ahead and take a listen at this interview because I think it's very telling on how a lot of individuals feel about Shedeur Sanders, not even knowing anything about him.
Your team shocked me because it twice passed on Shedeur Sanders in the first round and took Jackson Dart, traded back into the first round to get Jackson Dart. How did you feel about that as a longtime Giants fan, needing a quarterback?
So I said a couple of weeks before the draft, and I feel like I'm the first person to say it, don't pick him. His lights are not meant for Broadway, and they didn't pick him. I don't like my quarterbacks flashy. I like them under the radar. I like them workmanlike. I like them soft-spoken, and I don't prefer quarterbacks that like the attention.
Now, here's where it becomes a little bit interesting because people may say one thing, but what they actually feel and what they actually believe is another. Because everybody, I won't say everybody, but a lot of people have no issue when it comes to being flashy, when it comes to being brash, and when it comes to being arrogant. They don't have a problem with certain quarterbacks fitting the bill.
Now, I don't wear pantyhose, but a beauty mist can make my legs look good. Imagine what they'll do for yours.
Joe Namath to me is the GOAT. He was Broadway Joe.
I think mentally, throwing the football, well, I feel confident I can play better than anybody that's ever played the position.
I like to think that I'm the founder of swag in some respects, but he wasn't wearing the bling, but he was living life large. You know, braggadocious.
Joe come in, had a beer in one hand, a girl in the other hand.
He became such a big personality that he became, in a sense, bigger than the sport.
Historically, America has always loved that. We've always loved a show. And especially if you can back it up.
And look, he's just looking at the Kansas sideline. Right there, now that's inappropriate. That's inappropriate, uncalled for. And that right there, NFL GMs are going to see that and they're going to mark it down saying, that's not what we want in the National Football League.
With the first pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Baker Mayfield.
Now, Shedeur Sanders, being at Colorado, didn't necessarily have the talent to be able to compete for a national championship, but you can't argue with the numbers. The numbers are what they are. He had one of the best completion ratings in all of college football, threw for darn near 5,000 yards, a very good touchdown to interception ratio. And so you put Shedeur Sanders on an Oregon, or an Alabama, on a Texas. What are those numbers going to look like? You give Shedeur Sanders an offensive line, a run game. What are those numbers going to look like? And so this whole idea that Shedeur Sanders didn't have the talent or didn't have the resume, the cachet to be able to warrant some of his perceived arrogance or confidence, as a lot of us see it, to me is ridiculous and it's unwarranted. But Michael Rapaport is about to give us some insight into the real reason.
I think beneath the glitz and glitter, he's a tough kid and a hard worker and more meat and potatoes than you think.
I didn't watch him play as much as I know you watched him play. And when you say chip off the old block, I don't believe that. I believe that he's living up to this Sanders thing and he's his dad's kid. But I feel like he's more understated. He's soft-spoken.
No,
like
he is. No, he's not flashy in conversation or interviews at all. But listen, when he plays, he's as tough a kid as I have ever watched play college football. Trust me.
So I defer to you. You know way better than I do. I just woke up one morning. I was like, this is 2 or 3 weeks before the draft. I said, don't do it.
Okay.
Do not do it. I just... And
a
they
whole
did.
bunch of teams said the same thing. I think the league was with you.
And so Michael Rapaport, like a lot of fans, never even watched Shedeur play. Probably never even watched a lot of his highlights. But yet, like a lot of football fans, they didn't want Shedeur playing quarterback for their team. And like Michael Rapaport said, it had nothing to do with football because he didn't even watch him play. And so that's out the window. And so the only thing left, or the only reason why you wouldn't want Shedeur playing for your team, is the exact same reason that a lot of us thought it was.
Yeah, there was a part of me that thought he was made for New York because I think he'll live up to the hype. And if he does in the Big Apple, then he becomes the apple of the Big Apple's eye, as you know.
And Skip Bayless hit the nail on the head with that one, because if Shedeur Sanders got drafted by the New York Giants and he was able to live up to the hype, he was able to have success in New York, God forbid win a Super Bowl with that name in New York City, that would have been too much for him, because now that puts you up there with some of the greats. That puts that Sanders name up there with some of the greats right off the rip. Even if he just won one Super Bowl, even if he got to a Super Bowl, his name would have been up there, because like they always say, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. Playing in New York and having success in New York, especially as a quarterback, puts you just in a little bit different category than everybody else. Because of the pressure, because of the bright lights and everything else that comes along with New York, that's just the way it is. It kind of elevates you and catapults you into the stratosphere, as we all know. Just ask Broadway Joe. And that would have been too much for a lot of them to take. And so they didn't care how good he was. They just wanted to make sure that he wasn't in that same tier or in that same caliber of quarterbacks to go down in history. But those are my thoughts in any way. Let's go ahead and try to keep that conversation going on down below. And if you're not new to the channel and you've been enjoying the content so far on this channel, make sure you guys go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me as well. And as usual, peace and chaos.